Fire Mage is madness! Madness, I tell you! But in a good way. Stick around because in today's video we will go over the basics of Fire Mage when it comes to talents, gear, essences, rotation, and a lot more in 8.2, moving on to 8.3 for you to do dungeons and raids right off the bat. So let's kick it! A quick reminder before we dive in our stuff. If you like our videos and generally what we do, we have a lifestyle type channel where we vlog and talk about different type of topics, personal experiences, life improvement, stuff like that. Generally good vibes, and don't worry, this doesn't actually take away from our WoW content channel, but maybe there's something there for you and we already have a couple of videos out, so go check it out. And if you like and subscribe. Back to our regular fiery schedule. On the first row, you want to take Searing Touch for both raids and dungeons. This baby gives your spec an execute phase by turning Scorch into an automatic critical strike, providing you with a non-stop movement potential during any execute phases of any boss. This is especially good since execute phases are usually the most difficult in terms of mechanics and pressure on you, so having the freedom to not worry about moving is really amazing. Firestarter is a very niche option which performs well on bosses like Ashvane that stay up for a very long time at full health or above 90% for this to be effective. The damage gain is nice if you really want to go through that phase faster than getting through the last 30% of HP faster. Go with Searing Touch to keep things simpler, however. Second row is the mobility row, and the best, most used, universally applicable, generally acceptable option is Shimmer. Shimmer replaces your blink, gives you an additional charge, and lets you cast it without interrupting your cast. It's good on pushback mechanics or when you are in a tight rotation, interrupting your cast could fuck you up. This can save you from that. Third row brings one option to the table. I mean, you can still pick anything you want, but Rune of Power will be your best damage output on this tier. It takes a bit of practice to play it, mostly since you want to pair it with certain spells and cooldowns and not have to move out of its area of effect once you have casted it. On the fourth tier, Flame On will be your choice for pretty much everything. It adds an additional charge and reduces the cooldown of Fire Blast by a few seconds. This means you can chain instant pyros and ramp your ignites way quicker, and most of all, it's an amazing synergy with the Blaster Master Azerite trait that we will explore in a bit. Next up is a utility / crowd control row with two options mainly. The most use you'll get is out of frenetic speed. This makes your Scorch give you small sprints, meaning that during execute phases not only are you able to move, but really move. Pair this up with Searing Touch and your playstyle will feel very different during those windows. Ring of Frost sees some uses in dungeons on necrotic weeks or if your tank simply needs to kite certain packs. This is something you usually should discuss before tackling the content. The sixth row brings all options to the table, each having a niche usage and effect. For raiding, Conflagrate will be your default choice. All options here approach AoE damage in some sense, but Conflagrate will work best for raid encounters. Flame Patch will be your mythic plus AoE option. The one note here is that for this to actually be effective, you want the mobs to stay in the patch for the entire duration. It might be difficult to do with pugs or if the key you are doing is too low and they die quick. In those situations, Living Bomb can be better. Living Bomb is a bit of a niche pick, but definitely good if you cannot make Flame Patch work. And coming to the last option on the list, we have Meteor. It synergizes really well with Rune of Power since you will want to cast it always with Rune of Power. Its overall consistent damage, while a less popular but somewhat viable option would be Pyroclasm. This will change your gearing priority a bit as well, and it's not really that worth it, especially if you are starting out. Welcome to BFA, and with a little bit of luck we will only have to tell you this for a maximum of 1 more year. Ugh. Sim your character if you want to know what your best secondary stats are. Done? You haven't simmed shit! No matter, Haste will usually be on top, followed by versatility, crit, and mastery. Haste and versatility will be your ideal choices when gearing. Haste is self-explanatory, but there are a lot of very tight windows in your rotation where faster cast times can really make a difference if you can fit one extra pyroblast into your combustion window, or a quicker fire blast charge coming back to extend certain DPS windows. Again, not to mention haste makes your dots tick faster, adding to quite a bit of overall damage. Versatility is also self-explanatory. It scales well with eye level since it's an exponential increase to your damage, not to mention in high mythic plus and raids. It also reduces the damage you take, which can matter over the course of an encounter. Crit is not that amazing since combustion gives you a 100% crit chance anyway, and mastery is supplemented by your Azerite traits to the point where its value decreases in regards to your other secondaries. With these in mind, it should be easier to choose between items, although eye level will always be a problem, and there is no universal rule that can apply for an item with a higher eye level and bad stats versus a lower eye level item with ideal stats. Best way is to test them both or sim them both and choose what performs better. But the trinkets are actually a much easier system to work with. You ideally want on-use effect trinkets to pair them with combustion, which will be your main damage window. Even more so, there are two main ways to use trinkets. Either equip one on-use trinket with a passive stat proc trinket, or use a Jara's Font of Power with the Notorious Gladiator's badge. If the badge is troublesome to obtain for people who don't PvP, Balefire Branch is a good replacement. If double on-use trinket is annoying for you, especially in dungeons, replace the non-Ajara one with either one of Leviathan's Lure and Highborn Compendium of Storms. The reason double on-use trinkets work is because Ajara's Font buff lasts for 34 seconds, while the cooldown inferred to the other trinket will be 20 seconds. This further means that you can ask your tank, pretty please, for a 20-second pool timer, channel the Font of Power, then by the time you reach your combustion window you can pop your other trinket and both buffs will overlap with the combustion window, which is where you want to sink as much damage in as possible. You wanted the best? This is the best. But now without the traits it's not, so let's check it. Like I mentioned earlier, Blaster Master is your #1 go-to and you want it stacked 3 times. This essentially gives you extra damage windows when you can chain Fire Blast to get the buff stacked 3 times. This would be the extra thing for you to manage once you master the rest of the spec, so you can get even more damage out of your mage. Wildfire is another good option to have at least once. The extra crit it provides is converted into half that in mastery during combustion, and also applies as crit rating to other procs and damage you do that combustion does not work on. Fire Mind is the next on the list, and you want to ideally stack this as much as possible, but the RNG gods will only permit you to do so if you do PvP, since the PvP Azerite has the best trait combinations for Fire Mages. The rest of the slots are good to be filled with Wildfire or generic traits like Blightborn Infusion and Undulating Tides, the last one having that niche effect to it that you need to be mindful of. A special case for overwhelming power needs to be made. It's so good getting this one that you can opt for a major ring to have a trait weaker than Fire Mind or additional wildfires if it means you getting overwhelming power. Similar to the traits, the essences are also forming builds that you can use, with a few variations at the end. In raids, you want Memory of Lucid Dreams as your major. It defines the build to a large extent, making fire what it is today. Crucible of Flames as your first miner works best. Your last miner actually has a few options. The safest and simplest to get is Essence of the Focusing Iris, since it naturally comes from dungeons pretty quickly if you can do +10s. Conflict and Strife and Condensed Life Force can also sim really well at rank 3 in your miner slot. In dungeons, the major is still Memory of Lucid Dreams. If you are doing high keys or high for your gear, Conflict and Strife will be your best bet as one of the miners, since versatility is one of the best stats to have when tackling hard content. If you are not though, or simply want more AoE damage, go with Blood of the Enemy and or Purification Protocol, these two being specifically good with Flame Patch, triggering their effects really quickly in AoE. The opener assumes you have Memory of Lucid Dreams and the Hyper Thread Wrist Wraps from Mechagon, and if not, just ignore those bits in the rotation. Start by precasting Pyroblast 4 seconds before a pull and pop Memory of Lucid Dreams and a quick Fire Blast. Follow it up with Rune of Power and Meteor. Cast Combustion. Cast your instant Pyroblast if your first one crit, or Fire Blast if not, and then instant Pyro. Fire Blast again, Pyro again, and so on. Once you run out of Fire Blast, you can cast your Wrist effect. I didn't get them to showcase them for you, but you should cast them when you run out of Fire Blasts, and your last 3 spells were Fire Blasts into Pyro into another Fire Blast. That way the Wrist will reduce the cooldown of Pyro and Fire Blast twice, which is what you really want. Now the tricky part is that you will do this during your combustion window only, and can essentially let you fit up to 3 more Fire Blasts than normal if you also run Memory of Lucid Dreams. When in the middle of the fight, the priority of abilities start with Memory of Lucid Dreams at the top only when combustion is off cooldown. Same with Rune of Power, 1 charge to be used for combustion. Meteor should always be used quickly after a Rune of Power. Combustion on cooldown. Next up is the Hyper Thread Wrists if you're during combustion and ran out of Fire Blast charges. Use Rune of Power to prevent capping charges. Cast an instant Pyro once the Hot Streak buff becomes active. Cast Dragon's Breath if combustion has 1 second left, not leaving time for you to fish for more Pyroblasts. Use Fire Blast to convert heating up into Hot Streaks. Scorch when the target gets below 30% to generate both heating up and hot streaks. If not, Fireball to generate hot streaks. And lastly, fill in with Scorch when you need to be on the move and nothing else to cast. A few mentions here. Meteor should never be cast during combustion because it doesn't benefit from its effect, and you waste a GCD when you could be critting with Pyros for that sweet ignite buff. There are a few more advanced tips to be added to the rotation that could make this section a bit longer and harder to swallow. Yeah, boy! For this, we recommend checking the Alter Time Discord channel, where a lot of the top mages actually made a really complex graph for all you nerds out there that want to spice up the rotation with even more DPS. But don't go away just yet, because we still need to talk about the AoE rotation and more. When there are more than 3 targets, you want to hard cast Flame Strike, especially if you have Flame Patch talented. Fire Blasts are meant to extend the Blaster Master buff and get instant flame strikes. There are weak arts for this buff specifically, one is down in the description. When a target reaches 30% HP, start using Scorches to only cast instant flame strikes. Your combustion window will be your single target rotation, since the damage Ignite does by spreading from a bursty combustion will end up doing more AoE damage than casting flame strikes during combustion. You can also do your single target rotation outside your combustion if the mobs have uneven health, by targeting the big health mob and having Ignite kill the smaller ones. That way you are more efficient with your rotation. Since we mentioned the Alter Time Discord channel, a big shout out to Doravon, who once again helped us with our mage guide and provided us with a lot of sweet feedback and insights that, we would have needed years to come up with. Thanks, dude. You rock. Unless you are willing to sim yourself, the best way to approach your enchants is with haste in mind as your main stat. As such, enchant and gem your gear with a Cord of Haste and Quick Sand Spinels. Your weapon though should be Torrent of Elements, since it provides the most DPS output. Use the best intellect flask you can afford and a superior battle potion of intellect. There are other potions that can offer you more situational damage output. I would recommend simming them if you are interested and okay with carrying 2 or 3 different types of potions for different types of encounters. Lastly, eat feasts or baked potato if the 131 intellect loses out in front of the 93 haste that potatoes provide. a major thanks and shout out to our patrons for supporting the channel and the content that we do. You guys are amazing. You guys make us really feel good about what we're doing, and we're so glad that you like our content so much that you actually feel the need to support our channel, and we appreciate it. And hey, if you're also interested in supporting us a little bit more and maybe get some goodies along the way, check the details down below the video for our Patreon link and much more. You can also simply browse our YouTube channel for more class guides, and we pretty much covered all the specs so far. Have fun watching them, and thank you for watching this one, and we'll see you in the next video.